some important things to say about Forrest. So if you can't hear way in the back, feel free to come on, stand up a little bit closer. On behalf of Catherine and Easton and Nina and Dale and Jane and Dan and Allison and Evan and Chase and Carter and Patrick, I want to welcome you all today to the celebration of a life well lived. I'm Catherine's mom, Susan. Most of you know her as Kat. Because of Forrest's love of Catherine, he was also a son and a brother in our family, and we miss him every day. We're so grateful to all of you who've traveled a long distance during these trying times to be here. And for those of you who live locally, we really appreciate that you made this a priority in your day to be here with us today. We can celebrate today as we grieve because we believe in love, and we believe that love never dies. Forrest did not want us to have any tears. He wanted us to have a party because Forrest was a party. So to that end, I just have a few notes on how this evening will work. There's a few specialty drinks, which it seems most people have become aware of. But we've got the Pilot, which is a gin and tonic, one of Forrest's favorites.
Yes!
Wrong gin.
We've got the Hunter, which is a rum and coke, another of his favorites.
Yes.
And the Fisherman, the House Margarita. There's also some beer and wine, a selection of that. And after this service, it'll go to a cash bar. But thank you for coming early so you don't miss it. Immediately following the program, Catherine is providing a taco bar delicious buffet. So I hope you all can stay around for that as well. We have this outdoor area reserved until 10 o'clock. So we hope you can stay until 10 and share stories and laugh and talk about Forrest all night. There are patrons inside, paying customers, so we have the outdoor. Although the bathrooms are inside and they do require masks to use the restrooms. Forrest's cousin Noelle is making a memory book of memories of Forrest for the family. And so on your program, you'll see a QR code down there that says Memory Book. If you scan that, it'll take you right to her webpage where you can send a story or pictures or anything that she'll put together for you. But we also have an audio recorder back by that big tree towards the back. There's a sign back there. If you want to just tell a story while you're here after you've got a couple drinks in and tell a colorful story that way. There's also a QR code on your program for the ABTA, that's the American Brain Tumor Association, which is a nonprofit that provides research and support and education to families and patients. And then when you leave tonight, if you want to take the picture off the table or the bud vase or the candle, we have no place to put all these things, and you can keep it as a memento, of course. Okay, so back to Forrest. Hopefully you all have had a glass of champagne handed to you. Catherine and Forrest's New Year's resolution for 2019 was to drink more champagne.
Yes.
And as you know, Forrest never knew a stranger. He was one of the friendliest people I ever met. And so after we toast him, if you don't mind cheersing with the people around you, at the table next to you, standing by you, introduce yourself, tell each other how you met Forrest, or Catherine, or the kids, because that's what Forrest would do. I have an example of a story. Forrest went to a party one time several years ago, and there was a man there named Tree Nguyen. And he went up to this man, and Tree said, "Your name is Forrest? My name is Tree. We should be friends." And they were great friends from that moment on. So Tree is going to lead us in the toast.
You got it. You got it.
Even though I'm not going to be as eloquent as everyone's speaking tonight, I do get the honor of toasting Forrest tonight. Let's raise our glass to Forrest. A loving husband.
A little closer.
A loving father. A loving son. A loving brother. A loving cousin. And a loving friend. All your laughter, all your smiles to Forrest.
Hey,
Yes.
Hey, go ahead and toast and meet the people around you. Okay, we're going to move on. Forrest and Catherine's, one of their very dearest friends, Liza, is going to tell the story, the brief history of Forrest the man.
The son of Jane and Dale, Forrest was born on February 13, 1978 in Indiana. He grew up in Covington, Kentucky, across the river from Cincinnati, with Jane, his other dad, Dan, his sister and brother, Allison and Martin. Forrest attended various schools in Texas and Kentucky before attending the University of Kentucky. According to Jane, Forrest had no problem correcting the teacher and was known as the to-be-exact kid in class. If you know Forrest at all, this really should be no surprise. He spent his summers in Indiana at his family's home on Lake Wawasee, honing his fishing skills and love of all water sports and outdoor fun. After college, Forrest moved to Texas to work with his dad, Dale, and eventually took over the family business, High Altitude Services. This is also where Forrest entered my life. After weekly shooting practice at Red's, the guys would come to Serrano's for dinner, where I worked at the time. We became fast friends, and he became the brother I never had, a role I know he played for many of you as well. With his dad, he bought a ranch in Junction, Texas, where Forrest spent much time hunting, fishing, floating, and entertaining friends and family. In 2013, the family suffered an incredible loss when Forrest's brother Martin passed away. This was life-changing for Forrest. He saw the fragility of life firsthand and stepped up to take on great family responsibility. In 2015, Forrest married the love of his life, Catherine. They were an amazing match for each other, each one pushing the other to be the best versions of themselves. He taught her how to worry less, or at least he tried. She taught him how to communicate better, or at least she tried. Together, they had the best parties, often themed with extravagant costumes. In Kat, he found the perfect workout partner, the two of them constantly one-upping each other. Is this going down? Okay. Hold on, let me just, that's fine. Forrest and Catherine have 2 children. Easton and Nina, your dad was so very proud of you. He loved to take Easton fishing and play chess with him, and was quick to jump into a Nerf war with Easton and the neighbor boys. He held baby Nina like a football and would sing to her and tell her stories. He loved Catherine, Easton, and Nina more than anything. Theirs was the love story you read about in fairy tales. Forrest was that friend that when you just needed a one-word text response, you knew you would get a phone call from that original iPhone he refused to upgrade. In an era where text is the major form of communication, his was the call I always answered, and one of the many little things I miss. He shocked all of us when he joined Facebook, although I'm still not convinced he quite ever knew how to use it. His profile said that the world was his home, but he laid his head in Austin. His adventurous spirit took him all over the globe, hunting, fishing, skydiving, hiking, playing volleyball, flying his Cessna 210, and making friends all over. The hunter and provider for many, he was an excellent chef and certainly not shy to tell you so. If you've ever been to one of his dinner parties, you know his signature line was, "Man, I made just the right amount." I think it is fair to say that Forrest loved life. He lived big. He rarely missed an opportunity. He was a good listener, but also never shied away from a debate. He had a firm, welcoming handshake and gave the tightest hugs. There are so many facets to Forrest that in some circles he was known as the most interesting man in the world. But life is full of mystery, and Forrest was not afraid of mystery. He talked about not being afraid to die, and I think because of this he could live big. He entered into his last days full of curiosity at what lie ahead. Although I know he had to have been in pain, he had a smile on his face and was without a single complaint, giving every last ounce of strength to the loved ones around him. He knew that on some level he would continue to be with all of us, and he didn't want us to grieve. We believe Forrest is here. He is in our hearts, and the butterflies and the owls that have been visiting his loved ones since he passed. He's reminding us, when we open our eyes long enough to see it, that he is near. On March 18th, 2020, Dale Forrest Johnson, 42 years old, went to be with God, our Creator. We thank God for the gift of Forrest in all of our lives and look forward to the day when we will all be together again. It's going to be one hell of a costume party.
Thanks, Liza. Next, we've got Todd to share a few deep thoughts.
Hey, everybody. So I've had the pleasure of meeting, I think, most people here, but for those that don't know me, and by the way, I know what you're thinking, deep thoughts by Todd, right? If you didn't say it to me, I felt it, so just know that. But my name's Todd Littlefield, and like so many others here, I call Forrest my best friend. A brother from another mother, as they say, right? And I've got a few neat stories to share that involve the owls that Liza was referencing in her bio. But before I jump into that, I just want to say thanks to the family for letting me, giving me the opportunity to come up here and talk about my friend. It means a lot. I also want to say thanks to Jenny Williams over there, who invited me to a fish fry 15 years ago. And that's where I met Forrest, and I tell you, my life changed. It's amazing the adventures that I've experienced from that introduction, so I thank you for that. I also want to just take a second to call out the bravery that Catherine has, right? I mean, it's been a tough 3 years, but really just today, I mean, look around. All these drinkers, and she had the nerve to open the bar for an hour. I mean, Rob and T were here a half hour before it opened, getting their place open. So that's very brave to open that up for this casting Yahoos. So thanks, Kat, Liza, and the family for putting on such a great party. I mean, this is amazing. Look how many people are here. It's perfect. It's perfect. And this place was such a favorite place of Forrest's, right? Before it was it called before? Joe's? Freddy's. We used to come here and play washers. There's a lot of memories here. Forrest would be really proud, and you picked a perfect place. Yeah. So as we're all pulling our thoughts together for today, so many of the themes had to do with, butterflies, birds, flight, flying, and as we all know, Forrest lived so much of his life above ground, right? Just in the air. I mean, he spent his career scaling buildings. He loved to fly with his dad, with his buddy Keith. And my theory is this started very, very early in the womb. And I keep having this vision of little baby embryo Forrest looking down on the the landscape at the time, I mean, his dad, Dale, his mom, Jane, they're driving this huge hoopty station wagon around with an Airstream on the back. And my story is Forrest looked down, and you know that thing he would do when he was either trying to fact check what you were telling him or just in deep thought he'd do this thing. My theory is he looked down on that landscape. And by the way, Brother Dan told me that rig, that station wagon, and that Airstream rarely drove in a straight line. This is 1978, mind you, right? So, I just see Forrest sitting there with his fingers on his chin saying, this just isn't going to end well if these two trying to take me to the hospital. So he opened his flip phone. He called the stork, right, to arrange a drop. And we all know how cheap Forrest was. Forrest didn't want to pay for the normal stork drop with the bassinet and the blanket and the soft landing. He worked that stork down for a deal for hours and finally negotiated the economy drop, which was this. Head first down to the ground, right? Which is, you know, one of the great mysteries of Forrest is how did you end up with such a huge head on such a small body, right? Mystery solved. Mystery solved. So, it always killed me because I'm like, God, this guy's he's athletic. Why did he never play any sports? It was just because they couldn't find a helmet or a hat big enough for that guy. It's just huge. So I could stand up here all night and turn this into a roast session, but I think part of it's because I'm bitter at Judson and wearing out that microphone on his wedding with that speech. Yeah, make sure everyone's quiet. The staff, please be quiet. Now, I think we can all agree that adjusting to the passing of such a strong presence in our lives is a process, right? And when it comes time to continue on with the things that you enjoyed with the loved one lost, that's really when the real pain starts to set in, right? And I'd like to share 3 independent encounters a few of us have had with owls, right? The bird and owl, since that process of moving on without Forrest in our lives started, right? The first encounter came actually on Forrest and Kat's anniversary, right? And Christine and Liza had taken Kat down to a resort in San Antonio to get away, decompress, get some rest. And this owl appeared. Kat's napping in the bedroom. This owl appears on the railing of the balcony and just sits there and just stares at Liza and Christine for hours, right? For hours. And something you might not know is that in Greek mythology, owls were actually viewed as a protector of warriors as they went into battle. Owls were often seen around battlefields, and the Greeks believed that they accompanied their armies into war, helping with motivation and providing strength. A protector, always looking down upon those who needed it most. And I see that owl sitting there looking at Liza and Catherine, offering protection and motivation to be strong for their friend. Now the second encounter, it came in early December of last year. And I had recently moved back to Austin and moved into the front house of Mission Ridge. And, you know, I hadn't been around, so I started to spend time with the family again and the kids. And in the process of, you know, moving stuff that was there out. Freaking Forrest. Flying away, right? How fitting is that? I mean, come on. But I'm starting to move my stuff out of the house, and Kat and I think both together were just having a tough time. You know, finally got to spend some time together and just talk through the loss. And you know, sometime around that time, she was at the house on Live Oak, and was there with Jane, and she had gone into the room to take a nap. girl, you take a lot of naps.
They're rare. They don't
Every, every story I'm talking about has you taking a nap. Yeah, Forrest did love naps. Right. But she's in bed and she's laying there and hearing this tap, tap, tap on the window, right? Tap, 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 tap. Finally gets out of bed, opens the blinds, and there's an owl. The owl, maybe, an owl, I don't know. But an owl standing there in broad daylight. I mean, how often do you see an owl once and it's just twice in the daytime? And they just stood there and stared at each other, right? Stared, and stared, and stared. Not moving, just staring calmly, offering motivation, strength, and most importantly, protection. That things are going to be okay. Now, the third encounter was one that I actually had after a hunting trip to Junction with Dale and Rob. It was the first time we had really gone out without Forrest to hunt for hogs and deer, and it was a great weekend. We just banged them up, shot them up, had a toast on the top of this place that we'd spent with Forrest so many times, and had a Dos Equis toast. It's great. And when I got back to the house at Mission Ridge, I was loading up the freezer. There's a freezer in between the two houses. Loading it up with all the meat that we had gotten over the weekend. Part of me sitting there thinking, hey, what's up, Forrest? Look how well I did, right? You're not here to compete with me, finally. So I walked back to my house, turn around, come back, and not 5 feet away from me, right in front of Dale's door, is an owl. Standing there, staring at the freezer, not me, the freezer, with a mouse hanging out of his mouth. And I'll show you the picture. If you want to see it later, come up and see me. The mouse was just as big as the owl, staring at the freezer, right? Now, I don't believe my encounter had anything to do with offering me confidence, protection, or motivation, right? That bird was clearly one-upping me. Almost to say, buddy, try harder next time, right? And my response, when we spend time at the ranch, you know how it is when Forrest would show up to any event. Always empty-handed, right? Never had anything with it. Food, beer, just, hey, come up with that, right? We're so used to that at the ranch. So we always had a saying that we would say when he would show up like that, and it was, Rob, earmuffs, kids. Rob, what was it?
Fucking Forrest.
Exactly. So true. Pretty special though, those three encounters. Now owls also represent wisdom, but I wasn't even gonna go there. No way, that guy had enough ego in life. He doesn't need any help in death, right? So, no, Forrest sure did live a life of adventure. I think he packed more fun in 42 years than anyone could ever comprehend. He was so many things to so many people, and it's really hard to put into a list of words who he was as a person. So the best parallel I can come up with is something only a child growing up in the 80s or before could really relate to, right? When on a summer day, the only rule you had from your folks was to be home before dark, right? I think of this kid opening his front door on one of those perfect Indiana days, hopping on his bike with a smile on his face and absolutely attacking the day. No agenda, no negative vibes, attacking the day. Forrest didn't just live his childhood in that fashion, he lived his entire life that way. His career, his hobbies, and most importantly, the time he had with his family. Attacking the day. That mantra didn't change as he pushed through his illness, nor did his attitude on life. His time was spent exactly how it was spent before his disease. Exactly. Fishing, traveling, enjoying family and friends, costume parties. Zero change. Attacking the day. The illness he had doesn't typically let those choose the way you spend your days. It decides for you, not Forrest. It also doesn't let you choose the ending, but with Forrest it had met his match. Forrest lived his life full until the very end. And when he exited this part of his eternal adventure, I couldn't help but think of a quote from a movie I'm sure you all have seen. It's one of my favorites, and I'm sure one of yours. It's from The Shawshank Redemption. And it takes place near the end of the movie as Morgan Freeman's character, Red, is reflecting on his friend Andy, thinking through stories of their friendship and how he managed to escape freedom his way. He said that some birds aren't meant to be caged. Their feathers are just too bright. When I think of that quote, I think of Forrest, soaring above Lake Wawasee like an eagle, enjoying the next chapter of his adventure and protecting us all. Thanks.
Now Forrest's stepdad Dan is going to come up with a few memories.
As my wife once said, we don't do steps in our family, so just a dad. After listening to Liza, I thought, oh man, I should have gone first. But having listened to Liza and Todd, I have a couple of things that I just want to add to what they had to say and maybe clarify some things. So Liza. When Forrest was in grade school, Gene, I'm going to say third grade, we were called into school. They wanted to talk to us about Forrest's progress, third grade. We went in and the woman said, it's about time you people understand that the best he's ever going to be is an auto mechanic. We said, you've missed something here because we know better than that. And we all now know better than that. So, unfortunately, it came out of her mouth and we moved on. As far as sports went, Todd, there was a helmet that fit his head. When we moved from Garland to Dallas, he said, Dad, I want to go out and play football. I said, go ahead. Up until that point, he didn't want to be involved in a lot of sports because it would have interfered with his fishing on Saturday and Sunday. So that was when a lot of things were done. Anyway, so he went out for football. He played about 2 weeks. He came home one night. I came home one night. He said, Dad, I was playing today. I said, how was the game? He said, well, I was playing and they called a foul on me. I said, really? What happened? Well, I tackled a guy. I said, well, that doesn't seem too bad. What were you playing? I was playing offensive tackle. So the next time I had dinner with Forrest, he's no longer on the football team. I said, Forrest, how come no football? He said, well, it's like this. My buddy told me that if we went out for football, we'd get all the girls. He said, I realized that all the girls were sitting with guys in the stadium, so I quit. I'm in the stadium. All right, that's all I can add to what's been said so far. But the two things that I wanted to talk about, that I learned a lot from Forrest, I think we all have learned a lot from Forrest. There were two things that were supremely important in his life, family and friends. And the story that I tell about family is right before I retired in 2000. He called me up and he said, Pops, come on down to Austin. I got a surprise for you. So I got in the car, drove to Austin, get to Austin. He said, we're going to the ranch. I said, cool. So Martin and Forrest and I head to the ranch. And he said, I don't know if you know, but it's Father's Day. And I want to spend it with my fathers. I said, okay, we'll do that. The most important thing to Forrest at that point was to recognize that he had two dads, and they were both equally important in his life. And he wanted us to be friends. And so he put us together in countless situations. And I feel so blessed to have had that happen because my buddy Dale over there and I think are pretty tight. But that's just an indication. He said, you guys have to know each other. You're going to be in my life. And you guys have to be friends because I want to hang with both of you. And it wasn't really a problem for either one of us. We're both Midwest kids, and we did a lot of the same. I never got shot at, but we did a lot of the same things. Did a lot of the same things in life. Not yet. Well, and he hasn't shot at me, and that's a good thing. And he taught me how to shoot, so I can defend myself then.
And I gave you a gun.
And he gave me a gun.
Doesn't work.
So to Forrest, it was important that people who he considered family were together and getting along. And there's other stories that some of you out there know about where he really tried to bring family members together, and he succeeded pretty much unilaterally. That's who he was. After family, it was friends. Forrest didn't know a stranger. He kind of blew me away with the diversity and wide breadth of people that he considered friends. We'd come down, we'd go to parties, and every time we'd look around, there'd be a few more people until it was just a massive crowd. I think of when Kat and Forrest got together, and the crowd grew by almost double because they were so close, the two of them, that all of their friends, either because they wanted to stay friends with the two of them or they just liked each other, became this huge homogenous family of friends. And I think that is probably what Forrest was most proud of. So on the friend side of things, Forrest taught me a very, very valuable lesson in life. And that is, if you want to have friends, you have to invest in your friendships. You have to spend time cultivating the people that are part of your circle. You have to be there for them, be there with them. And maybe I wasn't great at that before, but I certainly have strived to be as good as Forrest was in that regard. So thank you all for coming out, celebrating Forrest's life. You can't imagine how much he means to all of us. And I'm so grateful to know most of you, and those that I don't know, I've really tried to work myself around to meet. But again, thank you for coming, and thank you for loving Forrest.
Thank you, Dan. Now, Forrest's cousins, Judson and Noel, have a few words. They're brother and sister. Come on up.
Hi, everyone. What I love about tonight is I feel like Forrest is here through all these stories. Especially Todd. Forrest and I don't even know where to start. Closer to the mic? That was my wife, by the way, for those of you who didn't know. So I'm going to go a little off script, but then I'm going to go back on script because I'm not going to cry in front of 200 people tonight. Or I'm going to try not to. So I'm going to say that Forrest was supposed to be an auto mechanic, and I was supposed to be a watch repairman. Very far from where we both ended up. And I'll also tell a story about Forrest where he learned how to make an exception to being cheap. So he called me in college once and said, hey, I really want to get to know this group of people, and you know, I love that Natty Brown beer, and I'm paraphrasing. So I said, well, why don't you take that Natty Brown beer and give one to everyone at that party so they don't have to drink that Natural Light ice? He called me the next morning, hungover, and said, Judson, you wouldn't believe it. They invited me to another party. So I have a speech that I'm going to make through, but I'm going to tell you that you've heard this from everyone here, and I think what you're going to see is the consistency with which Forrest befriended all of us and inspired all of us. And as I put words on paper, I asked myself, how can I possibly do Forrest justice? And I grappled with, what would he do right now? Am I having a hard time? Going in and out? there might be COVID on this thing, so I don't want to like make out with it. Yeah. Oh, all right. That was a joke. I didn't see the disinfecting. Sorry. Thank you.
Just paralyze it. Don't know where his mouth's been.
Well, at least it's brother and sister in a row here. So I said, what would Forrest do right now? You know, what would he say, and what warm and witty thing would Forrest come up with that would make us all smile, laugh, and cry within 5 minutes? You know, and I really, that was the most enjoyment I had, is imagining Forrest captivating a crowd with his big voice and his even bigger laugh. And I thought of, and you might want to cover kids' ears for just one sentence. Good girl, good girl. I thought of the time Forrest called me when we were in college again, and he said, should I do a speech on the word fuck? And I said, no way. You're going to get kicked out of that class and maybe the school. And as I recall, the F-bomb was in that speech over 100 times. Forrest gave that speech in front of 30 or so classmates and a thoroughly impressed professor. He got an A on it, and he solidified himself as the cool dude on campus. And that was Forrest, right? He had the confidence, humility, and gift for diplomacy, and some kind of special gift that allowed him to deliver those type of messages without offending people. He hated California because we were too politically correct, because that just didn't jive with Forrest, right? He liked to rattle on about topics and open things up and create that worldview that we all know that's unique to Forrest. But what's been kind of recently tugging at my heart is those stories and those memories, and the fear that, you know, I may lose one of those memories, that it might fade away, and with it, Forrest, my best friend, you know, my cousin, really my brother. And I can barely accept the inevitability of this. So at that moment, I knew exactly what Forrest would do. It's strange looking through a microphone in a crowd. Forrest would tell stories. He would laugh with the crowd. He would cry with this crowd. He would tell stories to ensure that through them, that memory lived on. Forrest was a storyteller, we all know that. He had that aforementioned gift, but he also loved life. He enjoyed every moment, he connected fully with folks, and he was in that very moment. He used to give me a hard time about that all the time. I'd show up to Austin and I'd take 2 or 3 days to like decompress from LA, and he's like, why don't you just come out 2 or 3 days early and then call me 2 or 3 days later after you've decompressed. It's been a heartbreaking and heart awakening few years for me. I've mourned Forrest's illness and then his passing for almost 3 years. And I'll continue to mourn, but not today. Today's the day to celebrate Forrest's life, to tell his stories and to share the memories about the man that we're all here to commemorate. This is how I decided I can do him justice. To tell his stories, to tell my son about his namesake, about my best friend, my younger brother, who taught me true friendship. And he did. He taught me when to forgive and move on. He taught me how to fish, how to tie a knot, how to explore, how to laugh, how to tell great stories. Forrest felt that human hang-ups got in the way of enjoyment. He cherished harmony, and he loved to get large groups of people together, clearly. He was a catalyst, and we honor his legacy by telling those stories and living a bit more like him. So I try to be on my phone less. I'm not going to get a flip phone. I try to nap more, truly. I took a nap today in his honor. I laugh more. I try to travel more, despite COVID. I try to be with the people I love and to give as much love to the people that love me as I possibly can. And I try to tell his stories and share his wisdom. And Forrest is alive in me through those memories, and he lives on through those stories. I'm going to teach my son about Forrest's worldview. I'm going to tell baby Forrest about the first person to get me and who empowered me, even though he was often annoyed with me. For those of you who know us, you'd say yes. Dale will have a few stories tonight to share with you about that. But in true Forrest fashion, those moments were added to his repertoire of stories, and he loved those stories. That's what he did. It was like magic. He would turn those moments into stories, and he would live them and relive them. And I'm going to tell baby Forrest about the kind soul that still inspires people to get together today. And quite honestly, there's 200 people's stories here. Enough for a novel, I'm sure, and enough for a lifetime of memories. And I want to hear all those stories. because our stories keep who we love alive, and who we love is who we are. So to memorialize these stories, Forrest's brother-in-law, Peter, is going to capture those. His mother mentioned that. Oh, Peter's here, but he's going to have a station back here for audio. And he'll be capturing stories and memories of Forrest so that they live on. So that Forrest's son, Easton, and his daughter, Nina, can know their dad through our lens and love him for the same reasons that we do. Please share your stories, your fondest memories, and a little Big Fish, movie reference, is allowed. God knows Forrest and I might have embellished here and there. I do thank you for being here this evening, and I thank you for loving my Forrest, our Forrest. And if someone ever asks me, do you know Dale Forrest Johnson, I'm going to say yes. He's my best friend, my brother, and I can tell you a story about a great time we had that you wouldn't believe. Thank you. Love you guys.
Stay really close to this mic. So I'm very happy to be here this evening. I feel very honored that Kat asked if I would like to speak this evening on behalf of my cousin Forrest. As hard as it is, it really truly does feel like a gift to get to say just a few more words about the incredible life of my dear cousin Forrest. I told Kat last night that I've been with her family, I've been with my side of the family, and these groups of people in my life don't come together in these ways very often, and I have felt so much joy in the last couple of days, even though this is in some ways a time of healing and grief and closure. But the joy that I feel reminds me and really makes me feel like Forrest is with us, and I just love that feeling. So I look forward to more times to gather together in that way, in this way. So when I heard Liza, where she is, her bio, I thought she left Forrest's childhood in Texas out, which is kind of perfect because I get to talk a little bit about that. Forrest and I were 8 weeks apart, exactly, and he was always very proud to remind me that he was younger than me. Judson was just about 2 years older than us, so the three of us really ran pretty wild as kids when we were growing up. When Forrest would remind me that I was older than him, I would remind him that I was the native Texan in the family. So I have a lot of pride there for the three of us. So we grew up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for some time before Forrest moved north. And some of my richest memories of that time in our life were when we would leave our house in Richardson and we would walk down our street, aptly named Lookout Drive, to a very wooded, secluded neighborhood park at the end of our street. There was a creek running through it. Forrest and Judson and I would spend hours at this creek. We would catch snapping turtles, we would fish, we would catch frogs, from morning until evening. If my memory serves me, I don't think we ever saw a parent in those days. We never took food, we never took water, nobody smothered us in sunscreen. We just lived free. We lived wild and free. And those memories are priceless. One of my vivid memories of these adventures in our neighborhood were of this giant willow tree that hung down over this retaining wall. And Forrest and I would jump and we would pull these willow branches off, and it was always this mission to see if we could get these willow branches down. And then all we would do is proceed to whip each other with them. Come home covered in welts, but very happy and certainly ready for dinner. Some other vivid memories of that time in our childhood neighborhood were building forts and running up and down the alleyway. And Forrest and I, being close in age, were always very willing to surrender to what was being asked of us, some of which was following Judson's instructions on a multitude of inventions that he was working on. I think one of them was that we were sitting in a laundry basket with a fan and a sheet, and we were convinced that Judson was going to make us fly. I wasn't planning to tell that story, but in the spirit of Forrest's flight, it seemed appropriate. Forrest was always even-keeled with a very strong sense of self, as you've heard throughout. Now we know where Nina gets it. He always had a sense of courage, a sense of adventure, a sense of freedom, even at a very young age. I think Forrest was about 5 years old. Jane or Dan or my mom might be able to clarify this. When he decided that he was going to walk from Garland, Texas, to our neighborhood in Richardson, which was 8 miles, by himself. And cross a major highway. So he, in true Forrest fashion, shows up with an earnest smile and a very even demeanor, unsure what all the fuss was about. He also had a cup of baby field mice in his hand that he, Judson remembers, meticulously cultivated along this 8-mile journey as a 5-year-old. Our parents were a little freaked out, but he just wanted to know if he could have a glass of water. We also spent many summers at our lake house in Indiana, and most of us, Allison included, I think Martin might have even still been a baby, would wake up, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning like normal children, only to find Forrest peacefully squatting on the seawall fishing, or maybe walking down the road already having been fishing for 2 hours. And I am not joking when I say he was 5 or 6 or 7 years old doing this. We ran very wild and free as kids in the early 80s. Reference to the 80s, that's true. We are all 80s children. And those memories bound us together so much, not just as cousins, but as really good friends. Forrest was a devoted husband to Kat, an incredible father, and a fun-loving uncle. We were really loving growing together as parents, and I really miss his parenting help with my children. He was a wonderful uncle and parent. We were really loving raising our kids in the wild and free ways that we were raised, albeit with a little more sunscreen supervision and bottles of water. Forrest continued to embody a strong sense of freedom and independence throughout our childhood and into our adult years. His love of travel is known best by many of you here today. I know each of us could spend hours swapping stories, and we have been. Thank you for listening. About our adventures with Forrest. Fishing trips to Alaska, Mexico, swimming with jellyfish, playing and boating on Lake Wawasee, bungee jumping in New Zealand, eating in New Orleans, partying at the Texas coast, trips to the ranch, hunting, skiing in Colorado, and so many more. Forrest's favorite story to tell about me was the time I threw up in his Cessna, but I'm going to spare you guys the details of that. You're welcome to ask me about it later. And I hope we do continue to spend these hours together with Easton and with Nina and with Kat, reliving these memories and honoring the remarkable life that Forrest led. Maybe some of these stories we could save for Easton and Nina's college years, but I really do think we should tell these stories, and don't hesitate to tell them now in the audio booth or in the written form when you scan your little QR code later. But tell these stories we must. In remembrance, there is life. I'd like to close with a quote from Kat that has really stuck with me over the last year or so. As many of you know, Kat met Forrest not long after she moved to Austin. She said to me, somewhat recently, I don't know if it was Forrest or Austin or something else, but it felt like I was on vacation for the last 10 years. We all know that was Forrest. Austin's pretty cool, but that was definitely Forrest. After we're done gathering here today to celebrate, enjoy, and honor the rad life of my cousin Forrest Johnson, let's promise to all do our part to carry Forrest's legacy forward in our own lives. Whether it's through storytelling, stoking our sense of adventure, living with a little more courage, or always finding ways to make others feel like they're on vacation when they're with us. I love you, cuz.
Thank you so much, Judson Noel. And thank you to all of you for listening to our stories today. I know you have plenty of your own, and as we close, we're going to have Catherine, Easton, and Nina come up, and we're going to release some monarch butterflies. Butterflies have been hanging around them quite a bit for the past year and a half. So if you want to come up a little closer so you can see it, and we're going to sing Forrest Home. Catherine, you want to come up and say a couple things?
Thank you all so much for being here with us today and for enriching Forrest's life, and really all of your love and support for Easton and Nina and myself. It means so much for you guys to all be here. Thank you.
sack cape tied on around his head. And he's still jumping off the garage and will be till he's dead. All these years the people said he's acting like a kid. He did not know he could not fly, so he did. Well, he's one of those who knows that life is just a leap of faith. Spread your arms and hold your breath and always trust your cape. Yeah, he's one of those who knows that life is just a leap of faith. Spread your arms and hold your breath and always trust your cape. Spread your arms and hold your breath and always trust your cape.